And join us for this conversation right here in the studio is Ozioma Agru, partner, energy, finance, infrastructure, Strennan Bland partners. It's great having you here on the show.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So, last week I did have that business adaptability summit, and wide-ranging conversations had at the summit. Break it down for me, your key takeaways from the summit.
Thank you. So I think one thing was very clear from the summit. We need very clear policies in Nigeria. We need stable policies to drive the different sectors, oil and gas sector, the power sector, the financial services sector, because it is only when we have these stable policies that the investors can actually get comfortable investing in these sectors. So we need to reform our policies, and not just reforming our policies, we also need to reform our institutions, because it's one thing to enact these policies, it's another thing to have institutions that will be ready to implement these policies. So I think that that's one of the key things, reforming our policies and having institutions that are ready to implement these policies for the benefit of the investors. And again, just to mention, I think during the summit, I was very particular about making policies that are very practical, right? Because we tend to, my experience, right, being a policy advisor in this country, is that sometimes the government tends to isolate the policies from the realities on ground. So we need to understand, the practicality of the policies that we are formulating for all the sectors, especially the oil and gas sector and the financial services sector. How will this impact the consumers, the investors, so that at the end of the day, we are not just trying out policies that will be difficult to implement.
And looking at that data from the MBS, zero capital attracted in the second quarter in the oil and gas sector. What is this telling us, really, at this time?
Yeah, so still goes to the issue of investors not being happy and being discouraged because they are not getting enough return on their investments. I think that investors are afraid of our FX liquidity. The market has, the FX market has depleted so much in the past couple of months that there has to be a very critical intervention by the government. And I know that there are plans on the way. I even read in the news recently that there are plans to stabilize, to issue policies that will actually stabilize the FX before the end of December. And we are hopeful that that works, practically speaking, because we have business people, right, that have taken loans from the banks. And now the value of these loans have deteriorated so much because the FX, the value of the FX, right, vis-a-vis the Naira in the market has gone so low. So repatriating this money, taking back the profits, to their countries and to other investors in other places have become a problem for them. And when that happens, you're not able to see, the profit in the business that you're doing. You're just running on costs. So there are lots of businesses incurring costs, not making profits on their investments because of the FX liquidity. And so I think that's a very critical thing that has to, really be taken into consideration if we want to retain our investors, and if we also want to retain our investors in the oil and gas sector.
It's quite incredible, because I was speaking with my neighbor yesterday. He's a poultry farmer, and he's talking about the problems in their industry at this time. And FX, same story, FX. And I'm looking for one industry in Nigeria that this FX distortion is not impacting. And, tell me about the key policy changes or implementations that should be considered to redefine this oil and gas sector, because we heavily rely on it, and it would be quite unfortunate to play with it right now.
So to start with, the energy sector in Nigeria, and when I say energy, it's oil and gas and power, has a lot of prospects, right? The problem has not always been the country, it's about how we are running the country. Because even as we are complaining of, even as we are, envisaging that there's going to be transition to cleaner energies, and we're going to have a lot of oil and gas companies divesting from core, oil and gas exploration, we still see in the news that these oil giants are acquiring, upstream companies from other from states like the US, because they are comfortable, right, that they can put in their money to do this and they're going to get it back at the end of the day. So I think that we need to tackle things. Speaking of policy changes, we need to tackle things like oil theft. We need to tackle insecurity, right, vandalization of the pipelines and, oil theft, so that the investors are not suffering for, unduly. And then I also think that ease of doing business is very key, and I keep saying this. We have to encourage local participation, right? We have to encourage the local companies to engage in these businesses and make it easy. We need to license them once they have actually shown the capacity to do this business. We have to license them, promote them, encourage them to actually participate and partner with this other international oil companies to, do the business.
Because, most of the time we're always looking to the government to solve most of these issues. Everyone's looking to the government at this time. But talk to me about the role of other stakeholders, experts, policy advisors. What role do they play in, helping shaping this oil and gas sector in Nigeria?
So their role is very critical, right? Because I always recommend that the government should not work in isolation. There has to be proper engagement with policy experts, with consultants, with people who, work and see things from the perspective of the investors in these sectors. And so their roles are very critical in terms of formulating policies that are workable, policies that are very, practical, and policies that can be implemented. I think that what has to be done is proper engagement, involving these policy experts. We have so many of them in Nigeria. We have so many firms who can actually, provide these services. The government should be very conscious of it, and it shouldn't just be a government business alone. It has to be a proper alignment, right, between stakeholders of the affected industries and the government, working together to ensure that whatever policy that is being, produced will trickle down to the very last person in the value chain. And I'll give an example. There's no reason why right now in the country we are trying to encourage local manufacturing, and at the same time we're making policies from the financial services sector, that will encourage people to, encourage people to actually import these items that could be sourced locally.
That's the 43 items readmission.
Exactly.
Right.
So, the rationale when it was banned before was because, according to the CBN, because they wanted to encourage local participation. Now, it's important to open up the market, right, the official foreign exchange market for importation and all of that, but I don't know if proper engagement, right, has been done with the people in this manufacturing sector to actually ensure that this is not going to impact them negatively at the end of the day. And, if you're opening up the market for people to import items that could be sourced locally, then are you not defeating the purpose?
Because it's quite incredible, because, major experts I spoke to before the 43 items readmission, most of them were clamoring for those items to be readmitted so that to reduce the pressure on the parallel market window. But now that it's been done, nobody's happy with it at this time. Because
it's going to discourage local manufacturing. So there has to be a balance, right? It is not a policy that should be condemned, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of pressure on the FX market, and it has to be opened up, right? The market has to be freer, so that we don't have people always rushing to the parallel market and making the prices surge. But at the end of the day, it has to be end-to-end proper alignment. If you're making this policy, consult with a policy. If you're making a policy that's going to affect people in the health sector or in the manufacturing sector, consult with stakeholders in these sectors so that you understand how you can fine-tune it to serve everybody at the end of the day.
So at the end of the day, before taking on any policy, meet with the stakeholders in the affected industries. Correct. Before coming out with the policies.
Exactly.
Quite interesting. So talk to me now about what you're seeing coming in this industry. Right now we're dealing with geopolitics. We're seeing how the Israel-Hamas war is impacting the global oil market, and definitely all of that distortion is impacting our revenue here. We've seen oil prices actually drop, this morning and yesterday, big drops yesterday. So talk to me about how we can hedge, against the distortions, from the global oil market to keep this sector stabilized.
I think we need to encourage local participation, right? I understand the need to depend on foreign participation, but we're not doing a lot, right, to encourage the local participants. Because, check the states that have refineries. There are lots of refineries that are not working. Some of these refineries are actually owned by local participants, right? So we need to promote local participation in the industry so that we can also develop that capacity to build our own markets and have a robust economy at the end of the day. So we need, apart from formulating policies that works for everybody, we need to encourage local participation. We need to incentivize the system. We need to make business easy. We need to streamline the process. We don't have to suffer people who want to come into the industry and work. We don't have to suffer them unduly. We need to open up the market, make the market freer, allow people to determine the prices that govern their products as long as it does not have a devastating effect on the economy. Yeah.
All right. So with the way we're going right now with policies right here in Nigeria, where are you seeing this industry, say, in the next 5 years? If we continue in this path?
So, well, because there was an announcement by the president to, deregulate the downstream sector. And there are a couple of other policies, on the way. The reality is this: if we implement the Petroleum Industry Act, if there is a conscious implementation of the provisions in that act, inclusive of other regulations that are underway. There are a couple of NUPRC regulations that are underway. If we implement that, then I don't see a problem with the industry. The problem is always bringing out these regulations, these policies, these laws, and implementing them. I think that if we do that and encourage local participation, we'll be in a good place in 5 years.
In 5 years.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. Ozioma Agro, partner, Energy, Finance, Infrastructure, Stren and Bland Partners. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, I'll get a check on the global commodities market, the equities market, and other markets. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.